Would any of you advise a client to defy a federal court order?
No.
None of you would? How about you, Professor?
I mean, under most circumstances, we follow the government and private parties follow court orders. I suppose I would not rule out ever the possibility that in a sufficiently egregious order, there should be some consideration of whether there's a way.
So in some cases,
I think it's a qualified answer, yes.
In some cases you would.
In an extremely narrow band of cases, I think it would be considered, yes.
Okay. Personally, wait,
No.
Your testimony is if it's issued by Judge Kaczmarek, it's bad?
No, sir.
It's personal?
That is not my testimony.
Is the problem with the injunction? You were criticizing the universal injunction here.
Issued by a judge in a single judge division. I've been very clear today that those are a problem.
By a Republican judge in a Republican division, then it's bad.
No, Senator.
Otherwise, it's fine.
No, Senator. I think that single judge divisions are a problem.
What is the principal difference? I'm looking for a principle. I understand you hate the president. I understand you love all of these rulings against him. You and I both know that's not a principle. You're a lawyer. What's the principle that divides when issuing a nationwide injunction is okay when it's not? When the Biden administration was subject to nationwide injunctions, you said that they were travesties for the principle of democracy.
We live in a time where truth whispers but politics screams. And lately, it feels like those who wear the robe of justice are trading it for the cloak of partisanship. This Senate hearing between Senators John Kennedy, Josh Hawley, and Professor Kate Shaw wasn't just another political skirmish. It was a mirror held up to Washington. And what we saw wasn't pretty. Before we dive in, grab your favorite snack, pour yourself that drink you always chill with, and sit back. Because tonight, we're not just watching a clip, we're dissecting how blind justice is being replaced by political theater. And why your voice, yes your voice, might be the one that tips the balance back toward truth. This is unrestricted thinking, where freedom of thought still means something, and every opinion matters more than the noise from DC. So hit that subscribe, drop a comment, and tell me your raw truth. What you wish the White House in Washington could finally hear. Let's dive in and see what really happened.
Do any of you think that nationwide or universal injunctions are not being abused?
I'm not sure if I may, Senator, I'm not sure what the time horizon of the question is. I don't think that there could be good faith disagreements about the correctness of some of them, but I have not seen in the last 4 months abuse. No.
I've read your stuff. And I've read your writings. I don't want to get bogged down with this, but I have little respect for your opinion because I've read your stuff. When someone is in the White House that you agree with and someone gets a universal injunction against him, you don't like universal injunctions. You called them judges acting like they're politicians in robes and judges looking like crass political actors. But now that President Trump's in the White House, who you dislike, you think that universal injunctions taste like pumpkin pie. So I have to discount what you say because I think you act on your political beliefs. And I worry that that's what you're teaching your kids. So I'll leave you out of that. Do you think nationwide injunctions are being abused?
Certainly, Senator. I think that is.
They're being abused by both sides, aren't they?
Yes, Senator.
Both Republicans and Democrats are forum shopping, aren't they?
Certainly.
Professor, do you disagree with that?
I think both sides are abusing them. I agree.
Okay. Both sides.
Yeah.
There are no clean hands here. Now, your suggestion is that when a federal judge issues a nationwide injunction, there should be an automatic stay and an expedited right of appeal. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Do you disagree with that?
I haven't given enough thought to have a position on it, Senator.
I suspect, Professor, your answer will be it depends on who's president.
No, Senator.
Let me ask you about this. What if we had a rule? I was reading an article the other day. I'm not suggesting it. I just want your opinions. That said, if a president, any president, issues an executive order, let's say, that clearly violates settled Supreme Court precedent, that a federal judge can't issue a nationwide injunction. For example, if a president issued an order that said no one in America has right to counsel any longer, including but not limited to, in a felony case, having the government pay for your lawyer if you can't afford it. That clearly violates settled Gideon v. Wainwright. In In that case, a judge has no authority or does have authority to issue a nationwide injunction. But in a case where the law is unclear, a judge should refrain from that. Now, obviously, we'd have to trust our judges, but we're supposed to be able to trust them anyway. What do you think about that?
I don't agree with that, Senator, because I think universal injunctions transgress the limitations under Article 3, even if the underlying merits are clear.
I happen to agree with you. I don't think there's any basis under Article 3, under Supreme Court precedent, under the English common law for nationwide injunctions. I think politicians have helped judges, and many judges are politicians, to just make it up. And many of them are like Professor Shaw here. If they like the president, they're against nationwide injunctions. If they don't like the president, they're for him.
It all began with a question so simple, yet so powerful it silenced the room. Would you ever advise a client to defy a federal court order? Senator Kennedy asked. Professor Kate Shaw hesitated, and in that hesitation, America saw a glimpse of how fragile our legal integrity has become. Kennedy didn't flinch. He pressed harder, like a man defending the Constitution itself. Because if justice depends on feelings instead of facts, then the law becomes a suggestion, and a nation built on law becomes a house built on sand. As the old proverb goes, when the scales of justice lean with emotion, the truth falls to the ground.
For being here, Professor Shaw. Nice to see you again. Let me just start with you, if I could, Professor Shaw. You talked about the fact that there have been lots of rulings against the Trump administration. That's absolutely statistically true. I disagree with almost all of them. In fact, I think all of them. But the issue of this hearing really isn't the rulings, is it? It's the remedies. Would you agree? And those are distinct things. You may think that the ruling is quite correct, but that's actually not what we're talking about here today. We could have a hearing on that. Maybe we should. But we're talking today about the remedy. And the question is a remedy that binds parties who are not before the court, is that an appropriate thing? I mean, aren't you concerned about judges binding non-parties in their remedies? You may love the ruling, but even if you do, don't you think it's a little bit anomalous for courts to be going out there and binding parties who are not before them? I mean, is that something we want to encourage?
Senator, I think that judges have been issuing rulings that impact non-parties since Marbury versus Madison, right?
So you're not concerned about it?
I'm not. I absolutely think that they can be abused. And
Well, no, wait a minute. You were very concerned about it just a couple of years ago. Yeah. You said in response to a nationwide injunction on the Biden FDA's mifepristone rules, and I quote, "This injunction's a travesty for principles of democracy, notions of judicial impartiality, and the rule of law."
I think I've been consistent today. That was issued by Judge Kaczmarek in a single judge division. They're a problem. Those are a problem.
Him personally? Wait,
no.
So your testimony is if it's issued by Judge Kaczmarek, it's bad?
No, sir.
It's personal?
That is not my testimony.
Is the problem with the injunction? You were criticizing the universal injunction
issued by a judge in a single judge division. I've been very clear today that those are a problem.
By a Republican judge in a Republican division, then it's bad.
No, Senator.
Otherwise, it's fine.
No, Senator. I think that single judge divisions are a problem.
What is the principal difference? I'm looking for a principle. I understand you hate the president. I understand you love all of these rulings against him. You and I both know that's not a principle. You're a lawyer. What's the principle that divides when issuing a nationwide injunction is okay when it's not? When the Biden administration was subject to nationwide injunctions, you said that they were travesties for the principle of democracy. You didn't say the referral to Judge Kaczmarek was a travesty. You said his injunction was a travesty for principles of democracy. Yeah. So, in other words, the translation is just you didn't like the outcome. Is that right?
No, Senator. Look, we're talking about, I don't think Article 3 precludes this form of relief. So we are talking about prudential consideration.
Prudential meaning political?
No.
Then give me, so far I have yet to hear it. You've been questioned by multiple senators. I have yet to hear a principle other than the fact when you like the ruling, you think it's great to apply it nationally, including non-parties. When you don't like the ruling, it is a travesty for the principles of democracy, notions of judicial impartiality, and the rule of law.
Look, Senator, I'll say I think I am self-aware enough to know that my view of the underlying legal question, I am sure colors my perception of the remedy. I think that we should all acknowledge that. And yet I do think
that why shouldn't we stop nationwide injunctions for everybody?
I think there is.
That's what we're talking about today.
Because I'm not willing to leave without relief non-parties who are
injured. No, you're not willing to leave without the ability to bind President Trump.
No, I think that.
I mean, when it's Biden, it's okay. No. When it's Biden, it's a travesty. When it's Trump in office, it's no holds barred, whatever it takes, right?
I believe in a powerful.
What was it that President Biden's staff said? We've got to do undemocratic, unconstitutional things to save democracy. Why is it the same thing? I believe
in a powerful president. I do believe in presidential power, but power and constraint are not at fundamental odds.
What is the principle? Power. What is the principle? The legal principle. You've referenced prudence. You've referenced the judges you don't like. What's the principle of when an injunction binding non-parties, which was never done in this country before the 1960s? And let's see the chart, the Trump chart, which was done really only once Trump came into office for the first time. You don't think this is a little bit anomalous? You don't think that's a little bit
A
strange?
very
You think this is
plausible
good for the rule of
explanation,
law?
Senator, you have to consider is that he is engaged in much more lawless activity than other presidents, right?
You don't think
must
this
concede that
was
as a
never
possibility.
used before the 1960s, and suddenly Democrat judges decide we love the nationwide injunction, and then when Biden comes to office, no.
It's Republican appointees as well, Senator. And the 1960s is where some scholars sort of locate the beginning
Can you
of this. But
identify one
others,
before then?
Mila Sahoni, who's another scholar of universal injunction, suggests 1913 is actually the first, and others in the
so
20s.
the Republic endured for 150 years before there was a nationwide injunction.
Well, the federal government was doing a lot less until 100 years ago. So, there's many things that have changed in the last 100 or the last 50 years.
So long as it is a Democrat president in office, then we should have no nationwide injunctions. If it's a Republican president, then this is absolutely fine, warranted, and called for. How can our system of law survive on those principles, Professor?
I think a system in which there are no meaningful constraints on the president is a very dangerous system
That's
of law.
not what you thought when Joe Biden. That is not what you thought when Joe Biden was
every president
You
is
said that is
constrained
not what
and
you
must be,
said. You said it was
absolutely.
a travesty for the principles of democracy, notions of judicial impartiality, and the rule of law. You also said
Supreme Court
when Joe
Senator
Biden was president. Wait a minute,
agreed 9-0 with me on
You
that
also
case,
said
to be
when Joe
clear.
Biden was president, you said the idea that anyone would foreign shop to get a judge who would issue a nationwide injunction was just judges looking like politicians in robes. Again, it threatened the underlying legal system. People just trying to get the result they wanted. It was a travesty for the rule of law.
Then came Senator Josh Hawley, sharp, relentless, surgical. He didn't want emotion. He wanted principle. He asked Shaw, "What's the difference? When is a nationwide injunction right and when is it wrong?" But she couldn't answer. Not clearly, not consistently, because her answers shifted like sand depending on who sat in the Oval Office. Hawley called it out. He exposed the double standard hiding behind fancy legal terms. When it's Biden, injunctions are a travesty. When it's Trump, they're necessary. And that, my friends, is how justice loses her blindfold. What unfolded next wasn't a debate, it was an unmasking. Kennedy and Hawley peeled back the polished surface of academia, revealing what lies beneath. Politics in robes. Shaw, like many legal scholars, wasn't just defending theory. She was defending sides. Kennedy called it hypocrisy. Hawley called it dangerous. I call it the slow death of trust. You see, once judges and professors start choosing teams, the courtroom becomes a political arena, not a house of justice. And as one of my favorite old proverbs goes, when truth kneels before power, freedom loses its name. Let's be honest, this hearing wasn't just about law. It was about what we're teaching our next generation of lawyers, judges, and citizens. Kate Shaw, a respected professor, has influence. But when she tells her students that some rulings are evil, only when they come from conservative judges, that's not education. That's indoctrination. And I'll say it clearly. When professors turn classrooms into echo chambers, we don't raise thinkers, we raise followers. That's why unrestricted thinking exists. It's a space for raw truth, unfiltered conversation, and voices that don't fit the narrative. Your thoughts, your opinions, this is where they matter. So pause right now, hit that subscribe, and tell me below. Do you think politics has infected our courts? Because if you don't speak, they'll assume your silence means approval. Here's the bitter truth. If Kate Shaw's logic becomes the norm, where justice depends on which party you support, then no American is truly free. Because the moment the law bends for one, it breaks for all. Kennedy and Hawley weren't angry for nothing. They were defending the foundation of this republic, the idea that law must be blind to politics, color, and power. As the saying goes, a nation that paints its justice with party colors has already begun to fade. This hearing was more than a clash. It was a warning. A reminder that when we allow political favoritism in courts, we hand the keys of justice to ideology instead of integrity. And you, yes, you watching right now, your voice can still echo through the halls of Washington. You can make noise that the establishment can't ignore. So share this video, flood the comments, and tell your truth. What do you want the White House to hear? Because your voice isn't small, it's the cornerstone of democracy. Let's call this what it is. A fight for the soul of the republic. Kennedy and Hawley stood their ground not for politics, but for principle. And principle is what separates a free nation from a failing one. The solution? We need judges who serve the Constitution, not the conversation. Professors who teach law, not loyalty. Citizens who think freely, who question, challenge, and demand accountability. That's why this community, unrestricted thinking, exists. It's not just a channel. It's a movement. A place where we speak truth, even when it's inconvenient. A place where your opinion is power. So hit that subscribe, share your voice, drop your thoughts below, and tell Washington what America really thinks. Because without your truth, this government is just an empty echo chamber. Remember this proverb before you go. Justice dies not when the gavel falls, but when good people stop speaking. I'm your host. This is Unrestricted Thinking, where the truth has no filter and freedom has no apology. Stay awake, stay bold, and never, ever stop thinking freely.